I have my sketch here and my model for our Alla Prima painting section. Alla prima, technically, or in the literal translation to Italian, means to the first, or right to the heart of the matter, right to the primary matter. And in painting, that would mean right to the surface, right to the paint. We just got done with the more academic style of building a painting with the grisaille underlayer, rather meticulous grisaille underlayer, and then we layer up in glazes of color, and then finally some finish modeling, and then any extra glazes or varnishes. Alla prima, a lot of people think of it as wet on wet. It's a short session painting, and often it means a one session painting. We're not going to do that, and I'm not that fast, and this painting is going to be a little more meticulous than that. But as you'll see shortly, we're not going to do an elaborate underpainting. We're going to start laying in broader swaths of color right into our image. And my image on the left here that I've picked is a little interior. I happen to like kind of the classic lighting, you know, is a little glow. The difficulty or the weakness of this image is that we said we want more complementary colors in our composition. So I'm not tied to this photo in this case like we were with our more academic colors. So I'm going to change some things to heat this up to get, like, maybe I'll do that shirt a different color, the hanging shirt, rather than leaving it white. But just to give you an idea of the degree of sketchiness, you can see this is not a meticulous sketch of this drawing. We don't need that. We're going to kind of build this painting as we go. And I'll be back in just a couple minutes. I'm going to have a little pre-mixed color, and we'll start laying in some of the broad areas of color, and definitely not get bogged down on details. This is more painterly, more immediacy. You want to push through on this piece. So the one thing I did do ahead, and this is optional for you, but I think it'd be a good idea depending on your photo. I did tint my canvas paper down to this, well, it's mostly raw umber and some white, and then just a big wash on there so I don't have the real stark white showing through. On this preliminary layer of coloring, what I've done to inject a little more color into this painting, I'm using a little bit of this green. I've mixed that out of yellow, blue, and put some white in it. I have some red in this if I need to darken it in here. But bottom line is, I'm gonna lay this in here quickly, good sized brush, and I am not worried about cutting every detail here. I'm going to cut around this chair just because I want to save that shape for later. And you could just, I have some white on the side here too. I'm going to try to mimic a little bit of that, but this is just an initial foundational color here, so don't get caught on details. Work it in there quickly. Don't worry about hitting every look how it gets dark behind that shirt, so I'm going to emphasize a little bit of that shadowed space there. But other than that, I'm pretty light up here. Oops, a little bit of this. With acrylic, we can't readily do wet into wet, which is what oil paint permits you to do. The paint stays wet and workable for hours. And so in the course of a single painting session, oil painters, when Alla prima painting really became popular, were painting out in plein air, out in the open setting, and they would polish off a painting right in that amount of time, in a few hours. Now I'm dark over here again in that shadow, so I'm gonna mix in a little more of this darkened up green, just to mark that area. I'm not done with any of these areas. This is preliminary painting, but it's not the fussy underpainting of the grisaille. We got to get some color down, get our shapes indicated, and get our foundational colors in. You see how, I mean, look at the size of my brush. I would recommend in this early go, don't do it with a too small of a brush. And even if your final objects have a lot of detail to them, we will go find that detail later in the painting. Right now is not the time to get hooked on that detail. I'm keeping a lot of water close by and mixing up pretty loose pools of it so that I can blend it quickly into adjacent areas. You could put a little bit of your glazing material in there just to slow down the drying time, or if you have a little bit of an acrylic retarder. I just want to fan this out a little bit here so it's not too dramatically faceted in those big open areas. And I've got some, I'm not worried about the shading back there yet. I'm just kind of saving what I can see in that drawing there. Slats of the, and I'm going to be a lot of correcting here to do. You know, while I have a little bit of this paint, then there's a little bit of a greenish cushion there. I'm going to hit that in this color just to use up a little bit of my paint I have left, and just to mark that area in there. And I guess the only thing I would do, and this isn't a must right at this point, but while I'm here, I'm gonna there's a curtain over there, and I'm gonna darken this line up. It's kind of the shadowed area where the light from the door on the right side is not hitting. You see me cutting these forms, you know, right now I've got like this negative contour drawing of the chair left there unpainted. And you know what, I'm gonna, it's a little brighter up in there. I've got a little bit of this white left, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit a little bit of that and just fan it out to save some of that heightened value over there. I'm not worried about smoothing this out too much. I'm just kind of mapping out my plan going forward here and laying in large blocks of color. And we'll refine all that. We'll refine it, but leave a lot of brush stroke. And right now, I have probably even more brushwork than what I will finally have here, because as I make some other passes through here, I will refine that. Okay, I'm going to mix up a little more paint here, and maybe I'll lay in that floor then. Okay, I'm going to try to block in some of this floor area. You know, one thing I'm going to do, and it's more just it's drawing to kind of save the little bit of perspective I have on those floorboards. You see, I have kind of we don't need to hit this on the money, but I've got a yellow orange with some white in it to kind of be my lightest boards. I'm saving a little tinted orange for some of these intermediates. And then this one is full orange with what? How do you make it go dark? Add some complement, drag it down, then hit it with a little darker complement again of the yellow green. And I'm coming in pretty close to what I'll need in here. And the other thing I'm going to do with that dark color right now, and just because it'll save me a little directionality later, again, I'm not worried about super precision here. This is a rather painterly technique there. I'm going to spread that one out a little bit. And I'm going to paint right over these, but I think they'll show through a little bit and save that floorboard look for me to use later. It goes all the way back into that other little, that's what I like about this photo. There's a little two different spaces in there. There's another room. And you can see I haven't worked it. I'm not going to worry about putting a lot of grain in that wood or anything like that right now. I just want to get color laid in there. And because it's so directional, my inclination will be to paint it in that direction, just like we can, that we do with any form that has a clear directionality to it. And yeah, that's not a bad color here to be an approximation of these floorboards. You know, I've got a little bit of darkness up behind that chair and the shirt there where they're throwing some shadow. To keep the paint moving quickly, keep it wet. You know, you don't want the water running down the page, but I can get a lot of liquid into it and still have a, well, probably a paint about the consistency of a house paint. And just like you roll it on or brush it on, it doesn't come streaming down the walls. So it's just short of going too watery. I can cut this line around that shirt now a little bit. I can just see the bars of my furniture there of that chair. So I'm just painting in negative space. And I'm not worried about cutting it too close. I mean, we're going to revisit those areas several times. Now I'm getting a little darker over in this area, so I'm going to use some of that darker orange that I've made by mixing in some complements. I haven't put any raw umber in anything. Raw umber is what we did our grisaille in. I'm using strictly our 3 primaries, white, and then using a complement to take some of the intensity out of the color, and also generally to darken it down, like for these shadowed areas here. You know, it's almost black back in those areas, but I'm not going to worry about that till we're really closing in on the... And if I want darker, what do? Take a little more complement, a little bit of this blue. Turns into a muddy color, but you get this nice darkened kind of ambery color that wood will be in the shadows. And that floor continues back into that back room there. It's like a carpeting right about there, so I'm going to just cut that right about there. You know, with the Alla Prima painting, we have a lot more latitude. We're not trying to reproduce that still life with as much realism as we can. There's a lot of interpretation and the brushwork is more important than finely rendered objects. So I'll be able to come back and hit any of these. I'm just looking at that shadow from the leg of that chair, and again, I don't want to over fuss this at this point, but I can just kind of locate that. All of it's a little darker under here, so I can get a little darker back here behind the chair and this shirt that's hanging off the... And I have kind of a diffused line there. I'll break that up. And so this is the process essentially that this whole first go through of the painting will entail. I'm not sure what I'll do next. I think what I'll do, I think I'm gonna paint these moldings in quickly and whiten up that shirt, and then probably the chair, and that'll be enough to get us launched into this project. Okay, you can see I've brought it forward a little bit here, and the last thing I want to do here, I've hit these whites. I just kind of blocked that back area quickly with a little bit of lower value, darker value paint, just to indicate that that's receding. That kind of detail back in here is the kind of thing that I may just ignore altogether. It's for this kind of painting, pardon me, you got to be careful not to get pulled down those trails. And so on this shirt, I'm just going to lay in some of those highlights and we're going to be back here many times, so this doesn't need to be gorgeous. I'm just seeing that the highlights on that sleeve. In fact, I'm not going to even put in any shading on this. I'll let that tint be the shade here for now, but I just want to solidify this a little bit for composition and placement, and help me see how my painting's progressing here. Just kind of a hot white line around there. I'll follow that through, but the rest of this I'm gonna let kind of stay as is. That's enough information there to let me come back and work with this. So you see that there's a lot of rough edges to it that will need to be cut. That's our next step at tightening this up. Don't fret about that now. In fact, if I was to see this from a distance, I'd call it like a little watercolor sketch, and in some ways that's not a bad way to think of it. You're locating and blocking in, but we aren't doing a lot of fussy modeling yet. We're not worried about all our highlights and so forth. I got a lot of work to do here. You see, I didn't even put anything in these painting spots yet. That's information I just don't even need to worry about. I just want my painting kind of mapped out. And like I say, you didn't watch me put in some of the white and so forth, but maybe collectively I've spent 45 minutes on this. I'm probably stretching there, but that would be a good estimate for what this should take. Okay, so I'll stop here, and then we'll revisit this as we go through this project.